Welcome to Live Without Limits, the Success Shift, Think Like Your Future Self. I'm your host, Davina Shinsky, and today we're talking about something that holds more people back than the lack of resources, the lack of time, or even lack of opportunity, living from your past instead of from your potential. Because the truth is, many people are not limited by what's possible for them. They're limited by what they believe is possible based on what's already happened. So instead of creating your future, you keep repeating your past. They say things like, that's just how I am. I've always been this way. I tried before and it didn't work because of what I've been through. I can't. And without realizing it, they're letting their past define their present and decide their future. But you have to decide whether or not you want to make the shift, because we're talking today about how to stop living from your past and start living from your potential. And that means that your past is a reference point, not a requirement. It informs you, but it doesn't define you. And today, we're going to talk about how to break free from that pattern so that you can stop living without what was, but to start living from what's possible. So let's get into it. Remember, today, our purpose is to help you understand exactly where you come from. And that's inside you. Often, those who don't want to accept that their choices is what makes them who they are, they rather look at it as being an outside source affecting them and making their decisions for them, partly because they've fallen into the trap of the things they've been told by the significant other, by their parents, and even by a teacher, because teachers base their understanding of the child not on who they are and what they're capable of, but their grades. And some people are better test takers than others. So your grades are not truly going to show who you are or what you're truly capable of. It's like when you go to college, you have to take the SATs. And then your colleges will look at your SAT scores. They look at the scores coming out of your secondary and primary education. And that's how they base whether or not you qualify. Therefore, understanding exactly where all of this comes from, exactly where you're going, and exactly what it is that you want to achieve, that you have to know that you have the ability to choose. Because I can tell you this much, that I grew up with a disability and I was constantly told, you're helpless, you're worthless, you can't live on your own, you can't hold a job. And everything that I was told, I have proven to be wrong, because I made a decision that if you're going to tell me I can't do something, that's like challenging me to prove you wrong. And it's up to you to decide exactly what it is that you want to achieve and how you're going to get there. So now we're going to talk about how the past becomes your identity. Let's start here. Your past is made up of experiences, But your identity is made up of the meaning that you've attached to these experiences, and that meaning becomes your story. You know, life, everything we do in life is trial and error. And if you look at a failure as a stepping stone to learning what does work and what doesn't work, then you have more of a chance of succeeding than just accepting failure as failure. The problem is that for some people, they don't know how to change. They don't want to change, and they rather remain the victim. But you are not a victim. You are the choices that you make. Now, for example, maybe something didn't work out, and instead of saying that didn't work, you turned it into I'm not good enough. Or maybe you were rejected. That situation didn't align. So you made it mean I'm not worthy. And over time, these meanings became beliefs. And that belief became your identity. Statements like, I'm not confident. I always struggle. I'm not successful. I can't do that. And here's the problem. You start living if that identity is fixed, but it's not. It's just a story. Now, let me go back and give you an example that I'm working on a program that is about recognizing scams on the internet when you are putting together your opportunities, because there are some very legitimate opportunities online, but there are also a lot of scams because you got too many people who are looking to make a quick buck, and they will put out things on the internet that people, especially when they're hard up and they desperately need an income, they will fall into those traps. For instance, I had a, someone that I knew that was older, and they had infiltrated her cell phone, and they came on it with the name of her grandson's relative, and they were talking to her and encouraging her that she could get $10,000, that all she had to do was put up so much money, and then they would ship the cash right to her. And she gave it to her attendant, and the attendant didn't have the money. And then she gave it to me. Well, I knew it was a scam up front, but and I knew not to fall into the trap. But then I was talking to her on the phone, and so I started back and forth to getting it lower. And so she's like, she literally believed. And instead of contacting that person whose name that she had and asking them about it up front before she started giving that information out, she literally waited until after I had sent them $100, but I only sent it to them through Cash App because I knew I did not want to lose my money. And then it was like, oh, within 3 hours, they were going to deliver a box with cash into you. And then only after that didn't happen did she literally call them on the phone and find out that they had no idea what she was talking about. And I kept telling her, they don't give money to individuals, they give it to organizations. And only after that happened did she admit she had no idea how you get a grant. And I had several times applied for grants and knew the difference, but she was so determined. Luckily for me, Cash App did not want to address it or even cancel out that account. and my bank gave me my money back, and they went after Cash App. And then about a year ago, I got an email that there was a class action lawsuit against Cash App because there were so many scams that were running through them. And I got a settlement from that. But the idea is you have to be aware of these things and what is happening and why that is going on. This is why I am putting together a program to do just that. And that's what I'm saying is how your past influences who you are today and how you react in different situations. Now, let's talk about the pattern of living from your past because you need to learn. And that was an example of how you learn of how to recognize when a scam is a scam and when it's a legitimate job offer. When we live from the past, you make decisions based on what has already happened, not what's possible. So your thinking sounds like this. Last time didn't work, so why try? I've never done this before, so I can't. This always happens to me. People like me don't succeed. And what happens? You start predicting your future based on your past. Well, our past experiences automatically influence our thoughts. But what we're trying to tell you is this: be open to seeing what the potential is. Because if you can see exactly what your potential is, or be open to trying new ways of doing something, to set a goal doesn't mean you're going to get from A to B by going a straight line because it may look more like a triangle because you're going to go up one way and then you're going to come down another way and then you're going to have to backtrack because if one thing doesn't work, you have to try other ways. Always be open to say, I want to learn new ways of doing things and how I achieve it. And going back to that program, what I was trying to show you was this, that I've written the program, I put it in a funnel, then now I need to work on my chat widget to talk to people who come and look at that to get them into the funnel because the funnel gives them a way of first they're going to get the free red flags, then they're going to buy an ebook. Then when they buy the ebook, it's going to upsell them into another product. The idea is once they've purchased at low rates, they're willing to look at participating in a webinar. Then they would be interested in taking a challenge. And then from there, the opportunity for them to become part of a mastermind where they can talk about and learn more about how to recognize scams and how to recognize the right jobs and the right opportunities. Now, when you start predicting your future based on your past, and when you do that, you recreate the same results because you're thinking the same thoughts, feeling the same emotions, taking the same actions, and getting the same outcome. Like I said, it is a loop that you have. Think about it as a hamster on the wheel that they keep running and running and running, and they get nowheres, but the wheel keeps spinning. So here's what the loop looks like. Your past experience gives it meaning. Your meaning becomes your belief. Your belief becomes your identity. And your identity determines your action. And that action becomes the same result. And that's how people stay stuck for years, even when they want change. So why it feels hard to let go of the past? Remember, what we're talking about is we tend to understand things based on past experiences, but we want you to become more open, more willing to take opportunities, to see things that are out there, because technology has changed. When I first started doing my podcast back in 2006, you it was all audio. The term podcast hadn't even been coined yet. So therefore it was all done in a way and it was also a time when few people understood the power of a podcast. I remember talking to someone that he had set up a podcast on Blog Talk Radio, but never actually got it going because he was afraid he was going to run out of what to talk about when it comes to communication. But everything we do today is communication. And communication affects how you relate to people. And body language is very much a part of communication. There's so many different things he could have talked about that he would never have run out of a topic to talk about on his podcast. In fact, when I started doing this, I started by first interviewing some people, then talking about disability rights, then talking about entrepreneurship, and then eventually got into what I do today, which is understanding how your behaviors and really focusing on personal development, because how you develop who you are and how you develop your thoughts influences whether or not you're going to become a successful entrepreneur or whether or not you're going to be open to new opportunities, and how you're going to grow and accept what goes on from day to day in every way and everything that you do in your life. Now, why it feels hard to let go of the past. You might be thinking, if it's just a story, why is it so hard to change? Because your brain is wired to familiarity and safety, even if your past was painful. And here's also the thing, that your thought processes, how you think in everything, determines how you see things. And it also comes from your personality, because some people are very out, some people are extroverts, some people are introverts. The introverts are definitely going to be someone who is going to stay within that familiar pattern, whereas an extrovert is more willing to automatically try new things. But so where we were addressing it to is someone who's very much of an introvert and likes the steadiness. And that's also why you can say that opposites attract, because if one person's an introvert, then he's going to balance out the other person who's the extrovert, because that they look at things differently. They can talk about it. They can make decisions together in how they see things and how they're willing to be open. Now, let's go back and talk about those personalities, because you have the ability to be an extrovert if you're an introvert, but you have to learn to change your patterns along the way, because you have to understand that what your weaknesses are, what your strengths are, and how to move between them in different situations. And if you're willing to open up and address them and deal with them, then you're going to be more willing to overcome your past and look towards the future. So when you try to step into something new, you feel fear, doubt, resistance, overthinking, and your brain says, go back to what you know. Even if what you know is what's holding you back. Because what you're doing is you're willing to put the brakes on and stop yourself before you actually reach your goal. And the idea is here is, how are you going to stop putting the brakes on and start moving forward? Letting go of your past means letting go of an identity. And that can feel uncomfortable because you've been living that version of yourself so long. The shift, living from your potential. Here's the shift that changes everything. Instead of asking, what has happened to me? Start asking, what is possible for me? Because your potential is not based on your past. It's based on who you are and who you can become, what you can learn, what you can create. Your potential is not limited to your past, only your beliefs about it. So your beliefs are what you have to change, because your beliefs are what are keeping you from leaving your comfort zone and be willing to feel discomfort and try something that can help stretch you. When you start living from your potential, your thinking shifts to, what if this works? What can I learn from this? Who do I need to become? And what is my next step? Now, you're no longer reacting to your past, you're creating your future. How to shift from the past to the potential of who you are. Let's make this practical. Recognize where you're living from in your past. Pay attention to your thoughts. Anytime you hear, I always, I never, I can't because, that's just who I am. That's your past speaking. Awareness is the first step. Separate from facts from meaning. Your experience is real, but the meaning that you gave it is optional. For example, that didn't work, meaning I'm not capable. Those are not the same thing. So ask yourself, what actually happened and what did I make it mean? Because the meaning is what's holding you back. Choose a new interpretation, and you can't change what happened, but you can change what it means. Instead of, I failed, shift to, I learned something that will help me improve. Instead of, I'm not good enough, shift to, I'm still growing. This doesn't ignore your past, it reframes it. Define your potential. Now ask, who could I become if I stopped defining myself by my past? What would that version of you believe, think, do, expect? This is your this is your future self. Act from that identity. This is the most important step. Ask, what would my future self do right now? And do that, even if it feels uncomfortable, because your identity is built through action. Step reinforce it daily. So let's look at what you want to do because you need to reinforce it. Your past identity was built through repetition, so your new identity needs to be built through repetition too. Remind yourself who you're becoming. Speak it, write it, act on it, because what you repeat becomes your reality. Remember, when you do things 21 times in a row, it becomes a habit. And we need to create new habits. Think like your future self. This is what the success shift is all about. Thinking like your future self. Your future self doesn't say, this is what happened to me, so I can't. Your future self says, I can figure this out. I'm capable of growth. I move forward even when it's uncomfortable. Your future self serves your past as your experience, your lessons, your strength, not your limitations. So the question becomes, what would my future self believe about my past? Because your future self doesn't stay stuck in it. They build from it. Now, let's talk about the reflections for a moment. And let's see where that is going to take us. I want you to take a moment and ask yourself, where am I letting my past define me? And then ask, what would be possible for me if I stopped? Because the moment you stop living from your past is the moment that you start creating your future. Now, what we are doing is talking about how you can change. If there's one thing I want you to take from today's episode, it's this. Your past may have shaped you, but it does not have to define you. You are not limited by what's happened to you. You are limited by what you believe about it. And the moment you choose to live from your potential, everything begins to change. Now, I can use myself as an example because my past was real simple. I was born into an era when there were no laws that guaranteed people rights with disabilities. And I had to become my own advocate because there was no one else to advocate for me and help me reach my full potential. I had to decide whether or not that was what I chose and what I wanted, or whether or not I was going to allow other people to live my life for me and dictate to me what my potential is. If it was based on what my mother wanted, I would have sat at home, stayed on Social Security, and never have become an independent individual. And she was very toxic and very abusive and never had a nice thing to say because she was projecting what she felt about herself onto me and onto others. She was a very bitter, angry, and jealous woman. And my younger sister is very much like her and basically stole money from her sisters to live the life that she wanted to live and make sure she had money and could lord it over other people, because my mother grew up in a home at a time, because she went through the Depression era, that they struggled. And she was always jealous of her cousins and what they had. And she taught my sister to be jealous. I always looked at it as there's no reason for me to be jealous of what other people have because I can go out and get what I want for myself. And I'm not the type of person that's going to dress like someone else and go out and buy something just because they did. So that's the difference of why I was able to break those bonds so easily. Make a decision. Stop looking backwards for your identity and start looking forward for your direction, because your future is not created by your past. It's created by the person you choose to become. And this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and take one step today, one action that aligns with your potential. I'm David Ashinsky, and this is Live Without Limits, the Success Shift. Think like your future self, where we don't stay stuck in what was, we step into what's possible. I'll see you in the next episode and look for you to follow me and refer this episode to someone that you feel needs to hear it.